Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's theme is guacamole. Well, actually it's knowledge, but guacamole is a little more fun and memorable. So I'm going to describe to you a guacamole recipe from one of my favorite cookbook authors' blogs. She starts out like this: if pressed, I could tell you how to make good guacamole in one sentence. It goes something like this: mash ripe avocados with finely chopped white onions, a minced garlic clove, a squeeze of lime, then salt to taste. Simple and straightforward, right? How many times have you described an assignment to your team something like this? Or even proposed a new initiative to your board with this kind of detail? Or sent your spouse on an errand with that level of information? I'm guessing many times, because it covers everything they need to know, right? At least in our minds, it does. But the cookbook author goes on to write, but to make great guacamole, it's the little decisions going on between the commas in her one sentence list of steps that make all the difference. If you were standing next to me throughout the process, she says, you'd pick up on the dozens of choices and considerations that actually matter. Think about that for a minute. All the things that matter are things she's kept inside her head implicitly, as opposed to making explicit in her description, in her recipe. Her one sentence description of how to make guacamole reflects the curse of knowledge. This is a concept described by the Heath brothers in, I'm looking at my bookshelf, in one of their books. I forget exactly which one. But basically it's that we can't unknow something once we know it, that it's really hard to remember what it was like the first time we did something or before we knew in great detail what it is we're now trying to teach to someone else. And so when we communicate those things to others, we tend to leave out the steps that our brains fill in naturally, or the assumptions that are now second nature to us, but wouldn't be to someone who's hearing it or doing it for the first time. This guacamole recipe reflects a huge mistake that most leaders make, including me. We outline the basics or share a high-level path for getting to a goal, but it's all the little decisions in between the commas or the dozens of choices and considerations that matter that we leave out. Even better, she then goes on for 4 paragraphs about choosing her method for choosing the right avocados at the store. And that's not even a step that was in her one sentence, let alone at that level of detail. So that's just another example of something that is super important, but we leave out because we forget that our teams don't know it. So how can we break the curse of knowledge? Well, there are a few ways. One, we can pause. By paying attention to the curse, by appreciating that it's there, we can try to remember what it was like before we knew how to do this, to imagine hearing it or trying it for the first time and asking ourselves what's missing, what might not make sense here. Second, we can document. And actually, I don't mean you. I mean, probably having someone on your team or the person who you'd eventually like to assign this to shadow you, follow you around, watch you do it. Write down everything, all the steps, make the checklist. Invite them to ask you questions. Why do I do this step before that step? Why is this method one I prefer over that one? What's going on in my head that I might not be articulating? And the third way is to describe in great detail. So think about what the done and done well standards are for this task or project. What does done really mean to you? What does it look like when the thing is complete in your mind? And describe done well in incredible detail. Be as explicit as possible about your expectations. Now, I know you're probably thinking, oh, this sounds like a lot of work. And it is, but it's an example of the invest now or pay later mantra. We can either take the time once and hope that by doing so, the likelihood of getting the result we want the first time or getting closer the first time with less frustration and less tension is worth it. We're all cursed by knowledge in some way or another, but when we pay attention to the curse, we can overcome it.